There is a part of you that you spend most of your life trying not to see. It hides behind your smile, behind your achievements, behind the mask you show to the world. It is made of everything you suppress: anger, envy, shame, weakness, guilt, fear, and desire. Carl Jung called this hidden realm the shadow. And whether you believe in it or not, it is shaping your life in ways you can't imagine. The shadow is not evil by nature. It's simply the part of you that has been exiled, the emotions, impulses, and memories you decided were unacceptable. From childhood, you learned to suppress them. Maybe you were told not to cry, not to be angry, not to be selfish, not to stand out. To survive, you built a mask that was acceptable to others. You learned which parts of you earned love, and which parts brought rejection. The loved parts became your conscious identity. The rejected parts became your shadow. But repression doesn't mean deletion. The parts of yourself you deny don't disappear. They go underground, and in that darkness, they grow in power. The shadow becomes the unseen hand guiding your choices, shaping your relationships, influencing your fears and desires. You think you are in control, but you're not. The shadow doesn't vanish because you ignore it. In fact, it grows stronger the more you pretend it isn't there. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most people spend their entire lives blaming fate, luck, or other people, without realizing they're living out the stories their shadow wrote for them. Every toxic relationship, every self-sabotage, every repeated mistake is not coincidence. It's communication. It's your shadow trying to get your attention. The most common way the shadow reveals itself is through projection. When you see something in others that you hate, fear, or judge harshly, that's often your own denied quality reflected back. The traits you can't stand in others are usually the traits you can't face in yourself. You might condemn arrogance, but secretly crave confidence. You might resent laziness, but secretly yearn for rest. You might despise dishonesty, but hide your own truths. The world becomes your mirror, and the people you judge are the teachers your ego refuses to learn from. Ignoring the shadow turns life into a battlefield. You start to divide the world into good and evil, victim and villain, right and wrong, without realizing that both exist inside you. Jung believed that evil is not something outside humanity. It's within every human being. When you deny your potential for darkness, it controls you from the shadows. You become righteous, moralistic, defensive, but underneath, your suppressed aggression or envy leaks out in disguised forms. The anger you repress becomes passive aggression. The fear you deny turns into control. The sadness you ignore turns into apathy. The shadow is also the source of self-sabotage. Every time you say you want something, but keep doing the opposite, that's the shadow at work. You want success, but procrastinate. You want love, but choose people who hurt you. You want peace, but keep chasing chaos. You can't fix this through willpower or motivation, because the root cause isn't logical. It's emotional. The parts of you that sabotage you are not evil. They're wounded. They're trying to protect you in the only way they know how. They learned that comfort, safety, or love required certain behaviors, and they still follow those outdated rules. Jung said that the shadow is not a problem to be solved, but a part of yourself to be integrated. Integration means seeing your darkness without judgment. It means saying, "Yes, this too is me." It's not about glorifying the dark parts or letting them rule, but about acknowledging their existence so they stop ruling from the unconscious. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. The longer you ignore your shadow, the more it dominates you. You begin to live a divided life. One part that you show to the world, and another part that lives in secrecy. This division causes exhaustion. You start to feel disconnected from yourself, unsure of who you really are. You may achieve external success, but feel empty inside. That emptiness is not lack of purpose, it's the absence of integration. You can't feel whole while rejecting half of who you are. Jung described the process of becoming whole as individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating all parts of the self, light and dark. The shadow is the gateway to that wholeness. Most people avoid it because it's painful. To meet your shadow is to meet your shame, your guilt, your jealousy, your failures. It means facing the versions of yourself you buried to survive. But on the other side of that confrontation lies freedom. The freedom to live authentically, without fear of your own depths. Ignoring the shadow also leads to projection in relationships. You unconsciously seek partners, friends, or enemies who embody what you deny in yourself. The man who represses his vulnerability is drawn to emotional women. The woman who denies her anger attracts controlling partners. The person who hides their insecurity feels threatened by confidence. Relationships become battlegrounds of the unconscious. You think you're fighting others, but you're really fighting yourself. The shadow also speaks through dreams. Jung saw dreams as messages from the unconscious, symbols of the parts of ourselves that want to be recognized. Nightmares, recurring dreams, or strange figures often represent the shadow trying to make contact. When you ignore your dreams, you ignore your inner guidance. The psyche will keep speaking until you listen, through emotion, illness, or crisis. That's why midlife crises often happen when the shadow has been ignored too long. The unconscious eventually demands attention, and when it does, it breaks through everything the ego built to keep it quiet. The shadow is not just darkness. It also holds light that was never allowed to shine. Many people repress not only their flaws, but their gifts. Maybe you were told you were too much, too sensitive, or too ambitious. So you buried your passion, your creativity, your sensitivity. These qualities become part of your shadow too. When you integrate your shadow, you don't just face pain, you recover potential. The very traits you hid to fit in might be the ones that make you extraordinary. Jung believed that wholeness, not perfection, is the goal of life. Perfection is sterile. Wholeness is alive. To be whole means to include all sides of yourself. To be capable of both tenderness and strength, logic and emotion, chaos and order. The man who ignores his sensitivity becomes rigid. The woman who denies her assertiveness becomes resentful. The person who pretends to be pure becomes hypocritical. Integration means giving every part of yourself a voice, not letting any one part dominate. The shadow also manifests collectively, in groups, nations, and ideologies. What people refuse to face in themselves, they project onto others. That's why societies divide, why hatred grows, why wars begin. The shadow unacknowledged becomes the enemy outside. Jung warned that the greatest danger to humanity is not evil individuals, but the collective shadow, the mass denial of our own darkness. The more virtuous a group believes itself to be, the more its shadow grows. The same is true for individuals. So what does it mean to face your shadow? It means to start observing your reactions instead of justifying them. When something triggers you, pause and ask, what is this showing me about myself? When jealousy, anger, or resentment appear, don't suppress them. Investigate them. Shadow work requires radical honesty. It's not comfortable, but it's freeing. It's like turning on the light in a dark room. The monsters shrink when you look at them. You can begin by journaling, noticing patterns, or working with dreams. Notice recurring themes in your life, the types of people or situations that repeat. Those repetitions are clues. They point toward unresolved inner dynamics. You can also pay attention to your judgments. The more extreme your reaction, the more likely its projection. The things that disturb you most in others are often the things you need to reconcile in yourself. Shadow work also requires compassion. You can't integrate parts of yourself you still hate. The goal isn't to eliminate your shadow, but to make peace with it. That means forgiving yourself for being human, for being imperfect, emotional, and contradictory. Jung said that the person who looks outside dreams, but the person who looks inside awakens. Shadow work is the awakening. The moment you stop pretending and start remembering who you really are. As you integrate your shadow, your energy begins to change. You become less reactive, less judgmental. You begin to see others more clearly because you're no longer projecting. You can handle discomfort without collapsing. You can admit your flaws without shame. Paradoxically, you become more loving because you understand that everyone is fighting their own shadow too. Compassion replaces superiority. Awareness replaces blame. This process also restores your personal power. Every part of you that you reclaim brings energy back into your system. The anger you once denied becomes healthy assertiveness. The fear you avoided becomes wisdom. The envy you hid becomes ambition. The sadness you suppressed becomes empathy. Nothing is wasted once it's integrated. What once haunted you becomes your strength. But integration is a lifelong process. The shadow is not something you fix once and for all. It evolves as you do. Each new phase of life brings new shadows, new blind spots, new lessons. The work never ends, but it becomes gentler. Over time, you stop fearing the darkness. You start seeing it as guidance. The shadow isn't against you. It's part of your soul's intelligence, pushing you toward growth. When you ignore it, life feels chaotic and meaningless. You keep running into the same walls, wondering why nothing changes. When you face it, life begins to make sense. You start to see patterns, connections, and symbols. You realize that every challenge was trying to wake you up, not punish you. The darkness was never the enemy. Your avoidance was. The cost of ignoring your shadow is high. It drains your energy, poisons relationships, limits your growth, and keeps you in cycles of fear. You can build success, status, and even happiness, but it will always feel fragile because it rests on denial. The unintegrated shadow will eventually rise through burnout, breakdown, or conflict, demanding to be seen. That is why ignoring your shadow is destroying your life, not through punishment, but through imbalance. To face your shadow is to begin living consciously. It's to see yourself not as good or bad, but as whole, capable of everything, responsible for everything, free to choose. When you embrace your shadow, you stop being afraid of yourself. You stop being at war with the world. You discover peace not by eliminating darkness, but by illuminating it. In the end, the shadow isn't your enemy. It's your doorway. It's the threshold between who you pretend to be and who you really are. Jung said that the gold is in the dark. What you fear most contains what you need most. The moment you stop running from your shadow, you start walking toward your power. So don't ignore it. Sit with it. Listen to it. Let it teach you. Because every light casts a shadow. And only when you embrace both can you finally see yourself clearly.